Good?
Perfect.
All right. The song actually works very well. I'm going to read what I sent for the talk in the bulletin here, and this is what it says. Turning worry. Anybody worry? 4 of you? All right.
We're not on worry.
Turning worry into soul-making seeds. What if our daily anxieties, fears, and addictive desires bubbling up, let's call this the dragon that's deep down inside that blows smoke, bubbling up from the ego mind are actually potential prayers looking to be found and cared for. From this perspective, we are always praying. If worry is prayer, or at least the foyer into prayer, then we're always praying if we're worrying. And most human beings, a recent book by a fellow Harvard psychologist called Tides of Mind. And in that book he said we need to do away with the computer metaphor for the mind. It's not working anymore. And he prefers the idea of the tides of the ocean lowering and raising. He said the human mind seems to work like that there is a natural cycle, and it's part of the way it works. Now, if you're someone that believes it's all God, then you would have to say that it's God. But the idea is that we go into low tide, and at low tide, we're crazy. And we're all crazy. I mean, in public, we may appear to be sane for periods of time, but most of us are crazy. When we get home with our partners, you know what I'm talking about. So low tide is that sort of, we go down into the ignorance of life, and we worry, we're afraid, we're alone, we're sad, we're depressed, we're even suicidal at low tide. And I'll guarantee you a lot of people in the New Thought Unity movements have suicidal thoughts and actions. But then the tide rises, and there's something natural about the human consciousness that rises to the place of it's going to be okay. It's going to work. Everything's fine. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And sometimes that tide can raise and lower in 2 seconds. So this idea of carrying prayer or turning worry into prayer is that this tide, this notion of consciousness or the mind rising and lowering, is all God. And if there's something, just as the tides of the ocean are there for ecological reasons, they have to work the way they do to keep the ecosystem running. So in this view, the psycho-ecosystem has to have the low tides and the high tides. So there's something natural even about, what? What's down here? Worries, anxieties, panic, depression. There's something purposeful even in those. And the person who becomes conscious of God, if you will, is capable of experiencing these low tides and high tides within the circle of God. Now, there are some spiritual folks who have sort of chopped that in half and said, when I'm in the low tide, I'm out of God. And when I'm in the high tide, then I'm back in God. And that metaphor works to some extent. I get it. Some of us have heard that acronym EGO, edging God out, EGO. I don't like it, but I see how it works at times. I prefer to look at it as EGO, edging God outward. Do you see the difference? The idea is that if God is everything, the low tide and the high tide and in all the in-between stuff, then even when I'm in the low tide, there is a purposeful thing going on, even in my anxieties, my depressions, my sadness, and my grief, all of that. There's something going on because at the low tide there is a kind of fuel that moves me to expand. If we were always in the high tide, there's no need for expansion, is there? Because if you're always up here, where do you go? Nowhere. So this idea, and I hear this a lot in the New Thought movement, I hear people, I've been in this movement for over 20 years. And when I first got over here, I found myself listening to people saying, it's all God. It's all God. But then, when I'd get them alone, one-on-one in private, they would say, oh, this stupid ego of mine. Do you ever hear people talk like that? And of course, I was taking what they were saying seriously, so I would say, well, the way you're saying it's all God, then your ego is also God. Oh, no. said, well, it's not all God. Well, yes, it is. I said, no, it's not. I said, from now on, then say it like this. It's all God, footnote, except my ego. Now, you see, I'm not telling you, because one of the nice things about the New Thought movement is we get to have new thoughts. So, we're thinking together, new thoughts. So I'm just proposing the possibility that instead of saying that the ego is edging God out, that some way the ego with its low tide is edging God outward. That there is something purposeful going on in these times of anxiety, worry, care. You just lost your minister, I understand. Rosella resigned to take care of her husband. Any anxiety over that? Oh, that's the most nodding I've seen today. Yes. And if we can enter into these periods conscious of, not that it's okay, I mean, because when we're at the low tide, the worst thing you can say to somebody in a low tide moment is, it's okay. Well, no, it's not okay. It feels horrible. So the first thing we need to do is acknowledge that the low tides feel horrible, and then from there, caring prayer takes those moments of low tide and brings them to God and says to the infinite source that knows, you know, I don't, I'm leaving it here. Now we hear that all the time, but if you're like me, many times I leave it there until I take it back, which often is very quickly. It's like, I'm leaving it right here, God. But I'm going to take a little bit with me. No, leave it all there. So I've got a couple of slides here I'm going to look at. So let's, I'm going to continue this next month when I come back because there's just so much here. Now I want you to imagine or to see that in the time that Jesus wrote and spoke and talked and all that he did, there was a worldview, kind of a general worldview. We all have one. We have inherited a worldview in 21st century America. When you're raised in a worldview, you don't even know that it's a worldview because it's just the way it is. You know, around here, this 21st century, we talk about the worldview as the Big Bang. It's like, oh, the Big Bang Theory. And we talk about the brain, the way the brain works. It's all about the brain and the Big Bang, the two big B's. Now, in Jesus' day, it wasn't that way. There wasn't that emphasis. They didn't really even understand how the brain worked. Obviously, there was no Big Bang. So what was the worldview that influenced everything Jesus taught? And we're going to see how this relates to the tides thing here. Jesus' worldview. Next frame, please. This is a worldview. Can I get the next click? There it is. Oh, too many. Back up. There. This is a worldview that kind of came from Plato and the Greeks. By the way, this is the worldview that the early New Thought founders had. Worldview that at the top of the pyramid, at the high tide, if you will, there is the one, there is the good, there is God, there is pure spirit, there is pure knowing, there is no separation. There are not even little lines in between the puzzle pieces. Everything that exists in existence and before existence, if you can imagine that, everything that is, was, will be, never was, is in one perfect, seamless piece. There's no separation. We hear that a lot. But then this worldview suggested that this infinite oneness, called the good, God, the unnameable, the infinite, is so amazingly complex that it must spill its complexity down into lower levels. So from this one perfect knowing, good, or God, desire, perfect desire comes the nous. Now this is a Greek word. Is this too loud for you? Could we turn it down just a little bit? It feels a little loud to me too. I mean, when somebody's sitting here like this, they either don't want to hear you or it's too loud, and I'm assuming the latter, hopefully. So from the one spills out what the ancients called the perfect mind. Now this is still connected very closely to the good, but the difference is that the nous, is the divine mind in complete unity, but it is focusing on its knowingness, its perfect knowingness. Because here you can't even name it. This is so complex that you can't even talk about it. But here you can at least talk about it as one mind. And this is where the New Thought movement comes in with the idea of you do treatment and prayer, and you remember that you are from and in the one mind, yes? So from there, from the one comes keep this word in mind. This is very important for Jesus' teachings. From the one mind spills out, and imagine like one of those tiered fountains where the top fountain spills down into the second. This is the second, and then it spills over into a third. Well, the third layer is called the soul realm, or the realm of soul beings. And these are beings, they're not human. These are human beings that are in their soul state. These are angels. These are all the beings that exist, that come out of divine mind, but exist in the realm of the invisibles. That this whole room, in fact, is suffused with or filled with these presences. That you're never out of these presences. That down at the lower level, where we're going to see in a moment humans dwell, these presences show up when we sleep, in dreams. And they show up in our fantasies, in our imaginations, in spiritual revelations, and that sort of thing. But this realm exists down here. So from the good, the one, the perfect, the unknowable, into the divine mind spills itself out into, like, imagine that this is the perfect puzzle, but the puzzle pieces spill down and begin to take some being down in this lower realm. Does that make sense? In other words, the divine thought becomes thoughts, plural. Now the next realm, the lowest realm, is the material realm. This is where animal and human desires exist. So the soul beings take on bodies. And they go to the Unity Church in Bremerton. So this is where we all are now. Now, according to this worldview, these realms are existent at this moment, but they can't be seen because there's a veil between this material, human, animal realm and the invisible realm. We suspect it. We have experiences of it sometimes. It touches us. We touch it. Some people live in it rather constantly, shamans and people who have a kind of openness to this soul, noetic one realm. In this realm, everything that is in this realm, everything that's in your consciousness comes from where?
The one.
From here. So there's nothing in us or in this world that is not connected to these realms. So it really is all one. Now, in our modern, jump to the 21st century, our modern Big Bang brain universe, there is a line here, and what is on the other side of that line? Nothing. Nothing. There's no other thing beyond that line. So in the 21st century view, where this doesn't even exist, this is expunged, most of our universities won't even allow a class that teaches this. They just won't. In our modern world, this material world, animal realm with human desires is all there is. So in this modern worldview, when you are in worry, panic, despair, depression, sadness, all these things that we hate to feel, what do you do about it?
Take something.
Say it again?
Take something.
You take something to fix it.
Pray.
You go on Amazon and you shop. You've experienced that, you start feeling agitated, you shop. Right? Just buy something. I don't even care what it is, but just that act of buying it is almost like a heroin addiction. It's kind of like looking for it. Yes, yes, yes. Not that, not that, not that. That I have to have. Click, 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 and boom. You don't have to get in your car. And you get that little, I just got something. Tomorrow, next day it's going to show up. If I'm a Prime member, 24 hours, it shows up. And you get it. And it's there. It's like Christmas. It's like little mini Christmases every other day. And there's that sense of anticipation. Something's coming. I'm going to get it. I'm going to open it. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to go, oh, that is so cool. Next. Right? So shopping is one way people deal with their anxieties, fears, panic in this lower realm. And then some of the more obvious, alcohol and drugs. Big one. I mean, if you've watched television lately, you know there's a name of a new drug on almost every freaking night.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm not opposed to shopping. I'm not opposed to drugs, so don't hear me saying that. That's not what I'm saying. Because if you believe in the all-God view, then those things are God too. And there's all, you know what I'm talking about. There's all kinds of things in this realm that we fall to take us out of the feelings of anxiety, worry, despair, boredom, loneliness, etc. Food is a biggie. Maybe the number one go-to in this culture. I think there should be the universal church of food, where we gather together every night about 8 o'clock, and we all sit down and say, have you been to the refrigerator tonight looking for something that's not there? You ever do that? Look twice. Maybe something will come. Have you ever had that experience of, I want something to eat? Not really. I don't really want something to eat, but I want something. And food is quick, and it's a sensation, and it reroutes the desire, right? It's like I desire something, I'm feeling bored, I'm feeling anxious, I'm getting old, I don't want to get old, am I going to be the next one with cancer? Am I the only one that has that thought once in a while? No. So food is a good one. So what I'm saying is, these worries and all this stuff down here in this realm, our worldview teaches us to find some way to short-circuit it. But in the worldview that Jesus had, all that exists in these lower realms, including our anxieties and our fears and our panic and our boredom and our loneliness, are all somehow connected to this realm. Now, let's go to the next slide. Or the next one. What I want you to notice here this morning, because like I said, this is a whole workshop, really. It really is a whole workshop to get to the more practical parts of this. But the big takeaway today, I hope, is this. In the Greek New Testament, from which we get all of Jesus' teachings, it's written in Greek, the Greek word for worry in the New Testament is the word merimnao. I want you to look at that word. And merimnao, you see it down there? And tell me from this list which word it is most closely related to. The word itself, N-A-O. What word in that word list? News. See? It's the same word. They've taken a little prefix, merim, and in Greek the word merim means piece or part. So merimnao means
partial understanding.
A piece or a part of the perfect mind. So in this view, worry, and this is the word for worry, worry is having a part or a piece of the divine mind, but not the whole. So in this view, each of us comes into this human world, and each of us has little bits of the divine puzzle, the divine mind, dropped into our consciousness. We're all different, so we all have different pieces of the puzzle. You understand what I'm saying? But if we don't know that, we're walking around with these little bits of the puzzle, and when we look at them, we can't see how they fit. Right? You ever see a puzzle piece? Or they have puzzles now that have 60,000 pieces in them. They can fill a whole room. You ever look at a puzzle, stack of puzzle pieces, and say, pick one up and go, where in the hell is that going to go? That's what we come into this world. Do you ever feel like that? So when we're sitting in the living room at 8 o'clock at night, and one of those little puzzle pieces pops up called finances or health or whatever, and we look at it and we go, oh, crap. I don't know where this goes. Right? Merimnao. I only have a piece of the mind. And if you don't have the idea or the understanding that the infinite mind, the nous, from which the merim nous, or the merim piece comes from, then I don't even know that my little piece, what? Fits somewhere. Fits somewhere in an infinite puzzle that has chosen for soul-making purposes to make a unique individual by giving me little bits and pieces of the puzzle. Now, some of our puzzle pieces are similar. That's when we can empathize with others. Because if you've ever looked at a puzzle, you know you've got this red patch in the puzzle over here, and you just gather together all the little red pieces of the puzzle and think, well, somehow that's going to go over here. But many of us have pieces of the puzzle that others don't have, so we can't even understand what they're worrying about. So in this view, when Jesus teaches this idea in Matthew chapter 6, which the Lord's Prayer comes right after it, you can't understand the Lord's Prayer without understanding this. Because the Lord's Prayer, essentially, is teaching people what to do with their anxiety. And we're going to go through this because I'm running out of time. We're going to go through this the next time we're here. But what I want to leave you with this morning is this. What if, let's go back to this little thing here. What if our daily anxieties, piece of the puzzle, fears, merimnao, piece of the puzzle, addictive desires, another piece of the puzzle, bubbling up from the ego mind are actually potential prayers looking to be found and cared for. So in that view, the goal is When I move into anxiety, that moment of anxious thinking or fearful thinking, or you know what I'm talking about. I basically have two choices at that moment. What are they? What's the sort of ego default choice?
Change my mind.
Huh?
Survival.
Think about something else.
Survival? Think about something else?
Fear.
All I can see is what? An ego. That little piece of the puzzle and how it does not fit. And in fact, it not only does it not fit, my conclusion is that it will never fit. Therefore, I go from anxiety to depression to suicide. Because how much of the world can I see? How much of the puzzle do I see?
No.
That little piece. The other alternative is what? To see that on the other side of the veil, there is the perfect divine noetic mind. This is what unity teaches. It's in everything you put up here. There's one mind. The universe, God the good, omnipotent. If that puzzle has a place in the bigger puzzle, then what can I do at that moment of anxiety?
Think about the rest of the puzzle. Think about the rest of the puzzle.
Okay, well, yes. But what's the best thing to do with my little piece at that moment that is causing me so much pain?
Just put it down.
No, Haagen-Dazs is the answer.
Put it down.
Put it down, do a prayer. This is where caring prayer comes in, and there's a whole bunch more stuff in that. Caring prayer essentially says, I look at this, I see it. I acknowledge. I desire something else. I don't think it's food. I don't think it's a drink. I don't think it's another lover. I don't think it's any of that stuff I've tried and tried and tried. Therefore, I take this piece of the puzzle, I hold it close to me and say, Infinite God, infinite source, I am trusting that you know where this piece of the puzzle goes, and I'm going to leave, not the puzzle piece, you have to keep it, it's yours.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm going to leave the timing and the working of the puzzle in your hands, because I don't know how it fits. And I am now going to rest in that. And how long will that rest last?
As long as you're
I don't know. I really don't know. If I'm really conscious that this is true, then I can take that piece of the puzzle and I can get immediate calm. Because what I'm saying is, I don't like this frickin' piece of the puzzle. I don't want to wake up tomorrow and have to deal with all the BS that goes with it. But I am trusting that there is a bigger puzzle. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul puts it like this in his epistle to the Romans, which was read this morning. He says, the suffering, I reckon that the sufferings or the anxieties of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in and as us. Therefore, I offer my prayers as groanings that the Spirit knows how to interpret, because I don't even know the words. Romans 8. The Spirit will interpret them. All I have to do is say, blah, 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 blah. You ever feel like that? I don't even know what to pray here. He said, give them to the Spirit will interpret them, and then right at the end of that saying, he says, for all things work together for those who love God and are called according to the puzzle purpose. But that's what it says there. That's why it says it. So essentially it's saying, I have a choice at that moment of deep anxiety, loneliness, boredom. I can sit in it, or I can say, I turn this over. And here's my prayer these days. I have no idea how to turn it over. I have no idea what to say about it. You do. And until you show me where this puzzle piece goes, I'm letting you have it. But please show me tomorrow. That doesn't say it in there. Blessings on you. See you next time. We'll go a little more deeply into this. Thank you.